The Dominion warship, the Eternal Glory, hung in space like a dark storm cloud, its crystalline hull absorbing all light that dared touch it. Commander Rex stood at the bridge, his 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the readings before him. Another primitive civilization had been detected in the outer rim of Galaxy Sector 7, and as always, the Dominion would claim it. For 10,000 years, the Dominion had ruled the stars unopposed. Their technology was unmatched, their military might unquestioned. They had subjugated over 300 species, each one falling faster than the last. This new world, called Earth by its inhabitants, would be no different. "Launch the first wave," Rex ordered, his voice carrying the weight of countless victories. "Standard protocol. Disable their primitive defenses and await surrender." The bridge crew worked in perfect synchronization, their scaled fingers dancing across holographic controls. 20 sleek fighters emerged from the Eternal Glory's hangar, their forms barely visible against the backdrop of space. But something was wrong. The humans' response wasn't following any known pattern. Instead of panicking at the sight of superior technology, their military vessels moved with surprising coordination. Rather than broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy, they maintained radio silence. "Their ships are accelerating," reported Officer Mel, confusion evident in her voice. "But they can't possibly think they can match our speed dash." Her words cut off as the first human vessel suddenly vanished from their sensors, only to reappear seconds later directly behind one of the Dominion fighters. A brief flash of light, and the fighter was gone. Rex's secondary heart began to beat faster. This was impossible. No primitive species had ever destroyed a Dominion fighter on first contact. Yet before his eyes, 3 more fighters disappeared from his tactical display. "Pull back the fighters," he commanded, but it was too late. The human ships were everywhere, moving in ways that defied the laws of physics as the Dominion understood them. They didn't rely on energy shields like every other race the Dominion had encountered. Instead, their ships seemed to be covered in some kind of reactive armor that absorbed and redistributed energy weapons. Within minutes, 15 of the 20 Dominion fighters had been destroyed. The survivors fled back to the Eternal Glory, their pilots' voices shaking with something the Dominion had never experienced before: fear. Rex stood frozen at his command post, watching as the human fleet began to form up. Not in a defensive position, but in attack formation. For the first time in his long career, he felt uncertainty creep into his mind. The reports they'd received about Earth had been wrong. These weren't primitives playing with basic spaceflight. These were warriors who had somehow developed their technology along a completely different path than any other known species. And they showed no signs of fear. "Send word to the High Command," Rex said quietly, his 4 eyes fixed on the approaching human fleet. "We have encountered something new. Something dangerous." As he watched the human ships advance, Rex realized that the Dominion's 10,000 years of unopposed expansion had just come to an end. Humanity wasn't going to be another easy conquest. They were going to be the species that taught the Dominion what it meant to face an equal. Or perhaps, he thought as another squadron of human ships materialized from nowhere, something even greater than that. The Dominion High Command facility on Planet Nexus buzzed with unprecedented activity. For the first time in thousands of years, an emergency session had been called. 12 Supreme Commanders sat around a circular table, their normally composed faces showing signs of stress as they reviewed the battle footage from Earth. "Impossible," muttered Supreme Commander Vale, his gray scales turning pale as he watched another recording of a human ship seeming to bend space itself. "They're using technology we've never seen before. How did we miss this?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Technical Advisor Reed, a young analyst who had studied countless alien civilizations, stepped forward. "We missed it because we were looking in the wrong direction," she said, her voice steady despite addressing the highest council in the Dominion. "While we focused on energy weapons and shield technology, humans developed something entirely different. She activated a holographic display showing the strange movements of the human ships. They've mastered gravity manipulation. Their ships don't just move through space, they bend it. And their armor? It's not energy-based at all. It's made of millions of microscopic machines that repair damage instantly. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Dominion had always assumed technological advancement followed a single path. They had never considered that another species might take a completely different route. "We have reports from 17 other fleets," announced Supreme Commander Vale. "The humans aren't just defending Earth. They're pushing back. 3 of our outer colonies have already fallen." A map appeared in the center of the room, showing the rapid advance of human forces. Their ships moved in unpredictable patterns, striking Dominion strongholds before vanishing into what appeared to be artificially created pockets of spacetime. "But how do they coordinate such precise attacks?" asked another commander. "Our communication technology is superior to anything we've encountered before." Reed stepped forward again. "That's another thing we missed. The humans don't rely on traditional communication methods. They've developed something they call quantum entanglement. Their ships can communicate instantly across any distance. No delay, no possibility of interception." The implications were staggering. While the Dominion had perfected the art of overwhelming force, humanity had developed in isolation, solving the same problems in completely different ways. Their technology wasn't better or worse, it was simply alien in the truest sense of the word. "We must adapt," declared Supreme Commander Vale, rising from his seat. "For the first time in our history, we face an enemy that might actually be our superior. We cannot fight them as we have fought others." But even as he spoke, more reports flooded in. Human ships had been spotted near the Dominion's core worlds. They weren't just fighting back, they were taking the fight to the heart of Dominion space. "They're not acting like any species we've encountered," Reed observed, studying the attack patterns. "Most races, when they develop new technology, become cautious, defensive. The humans, they're aggressive. Confident. They don't just use their technology, they push it to its limits and beyond." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent transmission. A human fleet had just appeared in orbit around Nexus itself. Their message was simple and clear. "Your empire has subjugated hundreds of species. We are here to end that practice. Surrender your conquered worlds, or we will take them by force." The Supreme Commanders looked at each other, feeling something they had never experienced before, the weight of being the inferior force. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The Dominion prison world of Tartarus lived up to its name. Countless species from across the galaxy were held there, representatives of every civilization that had dared to resist the Dominion's rule. The massive detention complexes stretched across the planet's surface like ugly scars, their dark walls reaching into the perpetually cloudy sky. Guard Captain Max stood at his post, watching the surveillance feeds with increasing unease. News of the humans' victories had reached even this remote world, spreading through the prison population like wildfire. The usual quiet submission of the inmates had been replaced by something far more dangerous: hope. "Sir," called out one of his subordinates, "we're detecting unusual energy readings in the upper atmosphere." Max felt his scales bristle. He had reviewed the reports from other Dominion worlds, had seen what happened just before human ships appeared. "Sound the alarm. Full lockdown proto-dash." His words were cut short by a brilliant flash of light. Where empty space had been moments before, now hung a fleet of human warships. But these weren't the sleek predators that had torn through Dominion defense forces. These were massive vessels, clearly designed for a different purpose. Their deployment ships, Max realized with horror. Ground forces. The humans struck with the same devastating efficiency they had shown in space. Their troops didn't drop from the sky in traditional landing craft, they simply appeared inside the prison complexes, their technology allowing them to bypass walls and defenses as if they didn't exist. The prison guards found themselves facing soldiers in powered armor that shrugged off energy weapons like rain. Human warriors moved with incredible speed, their reactions enhanced by artificial intelligence systems integrated directly into their combat suits. But what truly terrified Max wasn't the human's superior technology, it was their interaction with the prisoners. Rather than simply fighting their way through, the human forces were methodically freeing every imprisoned species, providing them with medical care and protection. Why? Max asked aloud as he watched the surveillance feeds. Why waste resources saving other species? His answer came from an unexpected source. A human commander, her armor marked with blue stripes, appeared directly in his command center. She removed her helmet, revealing a face that looked surprisingly ordinary despite belonging to such a terrifying species. Because that's what humans do, she said simply. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We fight for those who have been wronged. And we absolutely do not tolerate empires built on the suffering of others. Around them, more humans appeared, securing the command center without firing a shot. Their efficiency was frightening, but there was something else about them that struck Max, a sense of absolute conviction in what they were doing. Your empire took away these people's freedom, the commander continued, gesturing to the screens showing prisoners being freed. You thought that made you strong. But true strength isn't about domination, it's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. The liberation of Tartarus took less than 6 hours. By the time it was over 50 different species had been freed, each one with stories of Dominion cruelty that would spread across the galaxy. The humans provided them with ships, supplies, and something even more valuable, a promise of protection. Let this be a lesson, the human commander broadcast across all frequencies as their ships prepared to leave. Humanity will not stand idle while others suffer. We have the power to fight back, and we will use it. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for justice. As Max sat in his now useless command center, watching the human fleet depart with their rescued allies, he finally understood why his people had been so wrong about humanity. The Dominion had built its empire on fear and subjugation. But humans? They built their strength on something far more powerful, the willing alliance of those they helped. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in his life, Max wondered if perhaps it was changing for the better. The Great Hall of the Dominion's Palace of Submission had never been so quiet. Where once conquered species came to bow before their rulers, now stood representatives of dozens of liberated worlds. They gathered in clusters, former prisoners and slaves speaking in hushed tones as they waited for the humans to arrive. Among them stood Jack, the human diplomatic commander, wearing a simple blue uniform rather than the powered armor that had become so feared across Dominion space. His presence had a curious effect on the gathered aliens. They kept glancing his way with a mixture of awe and gratitude. The Dominion High Command approaches, announced a voice over the chamber's communication system. The massive doors swung open, revealing Supreme Commander Vale and his remaining council members. Their usual arrogant stride was gone, replaced by a cautious step that spoke volumes about how much had changed. You requested this meeting, Vale said, his voice carrying none of its former authority. We are here as agreed. The words seemed to pain him physically. Jack stepped forward, his movements deliberate and calm. 3 weeks ago, we offered you a chance to surrender peacefully. You refused. Since then, we've liberated 37 of your major worlds and freed over 200 million beings from slavery. The human's words carried across the silent chamber. Behind him, the representatives of the freed species stood taller, their presence a living testimony to humanity's actions. We could continue, Jack continued. Our fleets are positioned to take your remaining strongholds. Our technology surpasses yours in ways you're still struggling to understand. But we're not like you. We don't seek domination. He gestured to the gathered representatives. These people, the ones you enslaved and tortured for generations? They've agreed to speak on your behalf. To argue for mercy. That alone should tell you how wrong you were about the nature of strength. A tall, crystalline being stepped forward, a member of a species that had been among the Dominion's first conquests. We have known only cruelty from the Dominion, it said, its voice resonating through the chamber. Yet the humans showed us that power can be used to protect, not just to destroy. They ask us now to show the same wisdom. One by one, representatives of different species spoke. Each had tales of Dominion brutality, yet each now advocated for a peaceful resolution. The humans had not only freed them but had shown them a better way. Vale and his council listened, their multiple eyes wide with disbelief. The species they had considered inferior were showing a level of sophistication and mercy that the Dominion, with all its supposed superiority, had never achieved. These are our terms, Jack announced, activating a holographic display. The Dominion will release all remaining captive worlds. You will provide reparations to help rebuild the civilizations you destroyed. And you will submit to oversight from a council composed of representatives from every species in this room, including humans. He paused, letting his words sink in. In return, you get to survive. Your people will not be enslaved as you enslaved others. Your worlds will not be destroyed as you destroyed others. You'll have a chance to learn what real civilization means. Vale looked around the chamber, at the faces of those his people had oppressed for so long. Then he looked at the human, standing there without weapons or armor, yet wielding more power than the Dominion had ever truly possessed. We accept, Vale said, speaking the words that would end 10,000 years of tyranny. As the former prisoners burst into celebration, Jack smiled slightly. Humanity's first major intervention in galactic politics was ending not with destruction, but with the promise of something new. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of cooperation was about to begin. 1 year after the Dominion's surrender, the planet Nexus had become unrecognizable. Where once stood monuments to conquest and subjugation, now rose centers of learning and cooperation. The former seat of the Dominion's power had been transformed into the Galactic Council of United Species, its halls filled with voices speaking hundreds of different languages. Commander Rex, once a proud warrior of the Dominion fleet, now served as a teacher. His classes were filled with young members of various species, including his own people, all eager to learn about space travel and navigation. But the lessons he taught were very different from what he had once known. The humans showed us that space isn't just a battlefield, he explained to his students, pointing to a holographic display of various ship designs. It's a frontier for cooperation and discovery. Their technology doesn't just break the laws of physics as we understood them, it shows us how much more there is to learn. In another part of the complex, technical advisor Reed worked alongside human scientists and engineers from dozens of species. Their combined knowledge was producing innovations that would have been impossible under the Dominion's rigid thinking. The humans' greatest strength wasn't their technology, Reed told her team as they studied a new form of quantum communication. It was their willingness to think differently, to question everything they thought they knew. They taught us that progress comes from cooperation, not competition. The changes weren't just technological. In the city surrounding the council complex, former Dominion citizens mingled freely with members of species they had once enslaved. Restaurants served dishes from across the galaxy, while cultural centers hosted art and music from hundreds of worlds. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in the minds of the former Dominion elite. Supreme Commander Vale, now serving as his people's representative to the council, sat in his office reviewing reports of joint scientific missions and cultural exchange programs. I never imagined, he said to his human advisor, Tom, that surrender could lead to such advancement. We thought we were the pinnacle of civilization, but we were only seeing a fraction of what was possible. Tom nodded, understanding the former commander's amazement. That's what makes the universe so incredible, he replied. Every species has something unique to contribute. The Dominion's mistake was thinking that difference meant weakness. In the space above Nexus, ships of all designs moved in careful patterns. Dominion crystalline vessels flew alongside human gravity ships, while vessels of newly liberated species carried trade goods and diplomatic missions between worlds. The fleet that had once terrorized the galaxy now served as part of a joint peacekeeping force, protecting the very freedom it had once sought to destroy. In the Council's main chamber, representatives gathered for their daily session. The agenda included discussions of terraforming projects to restore worlds damaged by the Dominion's mining operations, educational initiatives to share knowledge across species, and plans for joint exploration of unknown regions of space. A year ago, the Council leader, a human named Lisa, addressed the gathered representatives. Many would have said this was impossible. That species too different could never work together, that old hatreds would never fade. But look at what we've achieved. She gestured to the chamber's great window, where the stars shone bright and promising. The Dominion feared what was different. Humanity embraced it. And in doing so, we didn't just end an empire, we built something far greater. A future where strength comes not from fear, but from unity. Not from conquest, but from cooperation. The chamber erupted in applause, the sound of hundreds of different species celebrating together. The galaxy had changed, and it had changed for the better. The age of fear was over. The age of discovery had begun. 5 years after the fall of the Dominion, a special ceremony was taking place in orbit around Earth. A massive space station, built through the combined efforts of 30 different species, hung against the backdrop of humanity's home world. Its design incorporated architectural elements from countless civilizations, a physical embodiment of galactic cooperation. Inside the station's grand observation dome, representatives from over 300 worlds gathered to celebrate the anniversary of what had become known as the Liberation. But this wasn't just a celebration, it was also a graduation ceremony. Commander Rex stood proudly alongside Technical Advisor Reed as they watched their first class of multi-species cadets receive their certificates. Young officers from former Dominion worlds stood shoulder to shoulder with descendants of those their people had once enslaved, all wearing the same uniform of the new Galactic Peace Force. "Did you ever imagine this?" Reed asked Rex quietly, watching as a human instructor handed out badges to the graduates. 5 years ago, we were ready to crush Earth beneath our feet. Now look at us. Rex shook his head, his 4 eyes bright with emotion. "We were so wrong," he said. "We thought we were strong because we could destroy. They showed us we were weak because we couldn't build." The ceremony paused as the main doors opened, admitting a group of visitors that caused a stir throughout the chamber. They were representatives of a newly discovered civilization from the far rim of the galaxy. Unlike in the days of the Dominion, first contact was now handled very differently. "Welcome," said Lisa, now serving as Earth's ambassador, as she greeted the newcomers. "You join us on a special day, as we celebrate not just our past, but our future." The new species, their crystalline bodies catching the light from Earth below, looked around in wonder. Their civilization had developed in isolation, much as humanity had, and they too had chosen unique paths of technological development. "We detected your signals," their leader said through a translation device. "We expected to find conflict, as we had seen in our own history. Instead, we find this." They gestured to the gathered crowd, where hundreds of different species mingled freely. Tom, now a senior diplomatic advisor, stepped forward. "That's humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy," he explained. "Not our technology, not our military strength, but the idea that difference doesn't have to mean conflict. That the unknown doesn't have to be feared." As if to emphasize his words, a massive ship appeared near the station, using the gravity-bending technology that humans had first introduced to the galaxy. But now its design showed influences from dozens of civilizations, each contributing their own innovations to its construction. "This is the Stellar Explorer," announced Lisa proudly. "The first of our joint deep space research vessels. Its mission is to push the boundaries of known space, not for conquest, but for discovery." Its crew includes members from 50 different species, including former Dominion worlds. The new arrivals watched in fascination as the ship demonstrated its capabilities, its hybrid technology representing the combined knowledge of hundreds of worlds. This was the true legacy of humanity's intervention, not just the end of an empire, but the birth of something far greater. Vale, now a respected member of the Galactic Council, rose to address the gathering. "5 years ago, we feared humans because they showed us our weakness. Today, we thank them for showing us true strength. They didn't just defeat us, they made us better." As the celebration continued, Earth shone below them, the cradle of the species that had changed the galaxy not through fear, but through courage, cooperation, and compassion. The humans had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to unite. The age of fear was truly over. The age of wonders had begun.